Right, it's time for Media Watch, and James Creedon is now with us in the studios. Good to see
Hi,
you,
Laura.
James.
Likewise.
Now, it's rare that we talk about Azerbaijan on this programme, it has to be said, but tonight I'm talking about it not once but twice.
That's right.
We talked about this so-called Azerbaijani laundromat a while ago with Robert Parsons, but you've got another story. Now, this is about the government there suing a French journalist for calling the regime a dictatorship. Is that right?
It sounds improbable, but it's true. The Azeri government essentially for being termed a dictatorship in this investigative journalism show called Cash Investigation on France 2. This is the main journalist and presenter of that show. She is one of two journalists who is being sued by the Azeri government, the Azeri state, in this regard. Now, what she said is, given the current context, for example, of politics and more than politics, even in North Korea, if this is the equivalent of today, if accusing North Korea of being a dictatorship and possibly being sued as a result. So from her point of view, this is just preposterous. Now, in fact, just today, the story is evolving. The state prosecutor here in France charged with that case has said that it is not receivable. That's a literal translation. So it's not even certain that this case is going to go ahead, but it's kind of extraordinary that it ever even got this far.
But it might make a lot of journalists think twice, mightn't it, before they criticise Azerbaijan?
And as some have been saying, there's an attempt here to transfer the situation for journalists in Azerbaijan to other countries such as France, because, for example,
globalization
in Azerbaijan, you have, first of all, let's take a look at Reporters Without Borders, what they say about all this, bearing in mind that I think it's 163rd out of 180, that's the ranking of Azerbaijan. 163 out of 180 is not great,
in terms
to be honest.
Of freedom for the press.
Exactly. And this headline here is actually what I was referring to there. This trial of Elise Lucet and Laurent Richard, the two journalists in question, when Azerbaijan attempts to export its repression to France. Now, they have recently brought in Azerbaijan I think it's a national press day, 22nd of July. I'm not sure if that's going to be an annual event, but it happened this year. And, for example, journalists might get very generous allowances for essentially free apartments, stuff like that. So it's not a bad deal for a journalist in Azerbaijan, as long as you don't plan on doing too much journalism. Now, let me find, there's a headline here which says it quite well. If I can find it, it was in the Washington Post. It won't come up right now, but it basically says free apartments for journalists in Azerbaijan. Now, I want to play one little soundbite here. This is during the visit of the Azeri president to Paris back in March, when he met François Hollande. You can see here. Let's just take a listen.
Qu'est-ce qu'il a répondu?
Now, what's going on here is a journalist from that same show, Cash Investigation, is, I guess you could say, doorstepping François Hollande and the Azeri president. He was in the courtyard of the Élysée Palace, basically saying, did you ask him about this? Did you ask him about that?
About political prisoners, he was
That's
saying,
right, political prisoners, exactly. So one can imagine that the Azeri authorities weren't too impressed with the methods of these journalists, which amounts to, I think, just, a certain pugnacious form of journalism, and perhaps the timing of all of this is not an entirely coincidental.
Yeah.
And as you were pointing out earlier, as you were talking about earlier, all of this is happening against the backdrop of the laundromat investigations showing that billions.
And an investigation led by journalists as well.
That's right.
The newspapers.
That's right. This is the organisation in question that has associated its investigation with The Guardian, Le Monde, and several other newspapers. And really, what it's showing is an attempt to buy influence. Simple as that. And one German member of the Council of Europe, one Italian member of the Council of Europe, the husband of the director of UNESCO, the finger has been pointed at them for having perhaps accepted
from a €2.5 billion
slush fund, indeed.
Allegedly.
So there you go.
Right.
It's not every day a state sues journalists in another country, but it's happening today.
Absolutely. Okay, all right, let's move on to another one. This is the story of a Brazilian war photographer, only he wasn't.
This is all sorts of levels of deceit going on here. Now, a war photographer who survived leukemia, except we're not even sure that part is true either, seeing as so little of what he put out.
This isn't one of those crowdsourcing stories.
Where the lies begin and the truth ends, it's hard to say. But in any case, he appears to be hiding out in Australia, having erased his Instagram account, which had, I think, 120,000 followers. This photo is of a British surfer by the name of Max Hepworth Povey. He had stolen his identity, this Eduardo Martins, who is a fake Brazilian war photographer. He also claimed to have been in all sorts of war situations in Iraq, in Syria and elsewhere. And his technique, what he had done, essentially, Laura, was stolen photos from other war photographers.
It's not done, is it?
No, he then inverted them. He used a sort of a mirroring technique so that
tinkering on them,
so that it wouldn't be identified, I suppose, by image tools and whatnot. But so all of this was identified by another photographer based in Sao Paulo by the name of Ignacio Aronovich, and he put up on his page the real photos and the fake photos, showing the extent to which basically they were the same photo, just inverted. And what is extraordinary about this is he got away with it for so long.
He managed to sell his pictures, did he?
He managed to sell his pictures. You had BBC Brazil, for example, picking up on one of his stories that, of course, has now since been deleted. An extract from that story said, quoting him, says, "People need to see this reality," capturing the refugee drama in Iraq, the horror and suffering lived by Iraqi people, etc., etc., etc. All lies. He wasn't there.
He wasn't there.
He
was at home with his mug.
He was stealing other people's photos and claiming not just that his photos, that these photos were the real deal or his photos, but also claiming a totally fake identity of this British surfer. So I suppose the difficulty nowadays when you're just going on the basis of somebody's goodwill or good word, but you haven't met them and you can't 100% prove they're there. There is quite a degree of trust now when you're dealing with online footprints.
It's a murky area, isn't it, James? Thank you very much indeed, James Creedon.